Welcome to MLB This Week, your weekly talk show talking about Major League Baseball and happenings of baseball all around the world. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary Mack.
This is Jake English from Bird's Eye View.
Hey, Jake English, how'd you get in?
I snuck in the back door.
Very good. Nice to see you tonight. And you have an excellent podcast called Bird's Eye View down there in Baltimore. A great podcast talking all about the Orioles.
I would say great is a stretch, but we do enjoy it, and occasionally the Orioles make it worthwhile.
Yes, they do. Well, Gary, we have a lot of great topics tonight. Why don't you lead us off with one story that we were talking about last week, even?
Well, of course, the big news in the baseball podcast world has been this whole iTunes ban, and Jake, along with myself and Rich, we were all banned from iTunes, but I understand some of you guys are actually trying to get on and have already got back on.
Yeah, I just got an email tonight, latest update, probably about an hour and 15 minutes ago, and right from Apple, and it was a senior tech asking me if everything was all right with my resubmission. So with any luck, I might be back on with Phillies Talk within a day or two, and then Gary will get you back up on iTunes. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, we managed to get back up, I think maybe 48 hours or so after the takedown. It's interesting, though, because we did resubmit our feed, and just about everything's the same except for the fact that the ratings and reviews are gone, which makes me think that Apple treated it like a completely new feed.
Yeah, that's about what they asked me to do, is resubmit a brand new feed, and then I can switch the feed after it gets reviewed and accepted, of course. So that's what stage the Phillies Talk show is in right now. But Gary is on the sidelines, I'm understanding, and he's waiting to see a few of the other shows get back, and then he's going to form his strategy, right, Gary?
Yes, that's what I'm going to do. But right now, I mean, I don't know. What did you do? Anything different, Jake? Did you change anything, or just put it in a new feed?
Well, here's the thing. No, we didn't change anything from the feed. As I'm sure you guys are aware, there was pretty shoddy information from Apple as far as why our show had been taken off of the iTunes store to begin with. We got a general FAQ that we were directed to, but that evening as things started to unfold, we could tell that it was an MLB trademark infringement issue. So the way our feed was set up is it was set up with Bird's Eye View, followed by a hyphen, followed by Orioles Podcast. And that was done so that if you go into iTunes, you can search for Orioles Podcast and find us, because that's the subject of our podcast. That's the thing we talk about. So we removed the hyphen afterward, so it's just Bird's Eye View. So you have to type in Bird's Eye View to find us. And that was accepted. Now, I'm not really sure if having the word Orioles in the feed is considered an infringement of MLB's copyright and trademark, but it was accepted, and now it's a lot harder to find us.
That's my dilemma. I don't know what to do as far as the name thing, because I have a feeling they'll bounce me back again unless I just submit it as one word or whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do that way, but it just seems crazy that, as you said, there was no direction at all, no ideas given on what to do, and it's leaving me in a quandary what to do.
Well, I think it's crazy because I feel a little bit more communication from either Major League Baseball or Apple would have made this thing go a lot smoother. I feel like if they were able to identify us and send us an email saying that you've been taken down, that means that they could have sent us an email saying, hey, we feel that there's a problem with your show in some way, shape, or form, and Major League Baseball trademarks are involved. And that would have opened a dialogue, and frankly, a majority of the podcasters that were affected probably would have made immediate changes to satisfy Major League Baseball. Now, Gary, I'm not sure that if you fall into that category or not, but again, that dialogue opening is a very important piece that was missing. And secondly, from that, I would be a lot more sympathetic to Major League Baseball if they were in the podcasting space at all. They're not. And if they were trying to defend their trademark in this space, that would be okay, in my view, but they're not. And so if they're going to go after, me in my basement talking about the Baltimore Orioles, when there's no competing official Major League Baseball sanctioned Orioles podcast, it's just a silly, draconian effort to go ahead and take them down.
Yeah, that's a good point, that they don't have their own. And interestingly enough, though, I did notice there was some that was still on iTunes, mainly MetsBlog.com, who does a podcast, but they are sponsored by SNY, and they did not come down. Another one was mostly Mets. They were also, they're sponsored by Caesars of Atlantic City, I think, and they did not come down. So it doesn't seem like it was across the board. Now, again, maybe they have permission, but, how do we know that? And it just looks kind of funny that they picked and choose almost some of the ones that they took down.
Well, I tell you what, this problem goes away if iTunes is smart enough to sort and to search properly. Because if MLB was really determined that Bird's Eye View were to make it clear beyond our cover art, which is not affiliated with the Orioles, beyond our content, which is clear that we are unaffiliated with the Orioles, and our description, which again says that we're a fan-produced podcast and clearly not related to the Orioles. If there was a way beyond all of those things for a user to search for an Orioles podcast and find us, this problem would go away, because we could scream to the rooftops, we're an unofficial Orioles podcast. We're a fan-produced media that talks about the Baltimore Orioles. And if there was some way within iTunes that you could intelligently search for that, this would make this problem go away, but that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and iTunes themselves has always been a little cagey about statistics. They don't really share statistics with the shows, which is kind of, in a way, a little unfair. I would like to know my iTunes statistics, and I'm sure all the podcasts would. But, they offer a big market, and that's what a lot of our listeners use to connect to our shows. I'm not really sure. I've checked my numbers, which I don't use iTunes for my numbers, obviously, because they don't even supply them. But my show didn't even suffer a lack of listenership due to this ban. So I'm really not too concerned with not being on iTunes, because we're usually available in plenty of other places on the internet.
And I think a lot of people now have the extra outlets to it. I didn't notice any numbers going down either, and that's why I'm curious about whether. And in fact, people that have subscribed already are still getting the updated podcast, which I don't understand. You just can't go new and get it. So.
Well, I tell you what, we could track on our, again, third-party number tracking. We could tell the day that we went down and the day that we came back. And though you can find us in other venues like, Miro and Stitcher and all these other places that podcasts are available, Double Twist, you could tell the day we went down on iTunes and the day we came back up just based on our numbers.
That's amazing. I'm really surprised at that. Gary's all over the internet. He's got Podomatic covered, Spreaker, and a number of others. So maybe it's something that the podcasters can wake up to and maybe spread their shows along around the internet a little better, possibly.
Well, sometimes I think I have too much around.
Well, assuming it's all automatic, of course. What I like to do is feed one place and then have it automatically updated, if possible, to other places, like different players, like not iHeart, but I'm grasping for the name right now.
TuneIn.
TuneIn.com is one of them, and another one is a really big early Alzheimer's setting in on me. Stitcher Radio is the one I'm trying to come up with here, but they get right from my feed. They take the show and run with it, and Stitcher is one of my biggest subscriber bases. So.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the direction we're trying to push people now. iTunes will never be toppled, but if we can get our listeners to download that app on their phone or find their way on the computer, we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for dropping by, Jake. And why don't you give us a little Baltimore Orioles primer here for everybody that'd like to find out more about the Orioles. How are they doing this year?
Well, I guess it all depends on what day of the week you listen. Sundays is never a good day for the Orioles. They take that day for a day of rest. But the Orioles are flirting with first place. They're doing okay in a weakened AL East, which we're not used to seeing. The players that we expected to do well are not, and the players that we didn't really expect a whole lot from are carrying us. So it's interesting this summer in Baltimore. If you're interested in the Baltimore Orioles, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, come visit us at birdseyeviewbaltimore.com. You can find us on iTunes if you're interested in birds, which is how you have to come find us. But gentlemen, I appreciate the invite, and keep up the great work. We really enjoy this show.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Jake, and good luck to the Orioles. And you got an excellent podcast there. I like how you guys introduce your drink of the night. That's something that me and Gary haven't graduated to yet, and maybe we'll need a drink after this show, Gary.
You know, every podcast has its own flavor and its own specific sound, and ours is basically arguing for 45 minutes, and that really facilitates things.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's what makes a show sometimes, and divergent views are good. You're not always agreeing, and that's part of what makes everybody do this. It's a great way to do a show, really.
Well, guys, thanks again so much. I think I'm going to hang up and listen to the professionals talk about real baseball.
Well, thank you. Have a nice night, Jake.
Good night, guys.
All right, Jake. Bye-bye now.
Well, Gary, Jake English there. Yeah, from Bird's Eye View, and it was nice of him to stop by and shed some light a little bit more on the iTunes ban of 2014, and I think our shows will be back soon. I'm surprised he got his up and running so fast. Like I said, the younger crowd really knows how to work this system.
Well, I guess my problem and your problem really are somewhat similar in that we have the name in our title, and that could be a little more time delay for me, depending upon what I decide to do. So, but it would have been nice to have some guidelines from Major League Baseball to say that you're violating a copyright, because technically it's a nickname, and I don't know, can a nickname be copyrighted? I'm not even sure, but I'm sure they've got the lawyers, and I certainly don't. So, but it would have been nice to have some guidance.
That's for sure. Well, we'll have to see how it all shakes out. And as you said, I'm not so sure that this wasn't a memo sent from someone to a person at iTunes, and maybe it was misconstrued, and they went ahead and knocked down a bunch of shows, and they really didn't have to or shouldn't have. I think that might be more the case, that it might be a situation like that, and iTunes seems like it's welcoming back all the shows. They probably don't have anything personal against us, but they have to enforce certain rules, and we'll just find out in the future, and we'll have to hope for the best. But our shows haven't suffered any lack of listenership, so we're pretty good.
I've put on my description, my show description, I've taken out the word and put in that it's unaffiliated and unofficial, and I even recorded a disclaimer that I'm going to play before each episode, I think, from now on. I did it last week, and I think I'm going to continue with that just to see if that satisfies them.
Sure. Well, hopefully our shows will be back on, but for now we're talking baseball, and we're talking a few of the top stories this week. And Gary, you had a great story to lead us off tonight.
Well, Bud Selig is announcing he announced his retirement, I should say, and they finally got around to forming a committee in baseball to find a successor to Bud, and St. Louis Cardinals chairman Bill DeWitt Jr. will lead that committee to find the successor to the commissioner. And also on the committee will be Chicago White Sox chairman Jerry Reinsdorf. It's also going to have Colorado chairman Dick Monfort, Philadelphia president Dave Montgomery, Los Angeles Angels owner Artie Moreno, Pittsburgh chairman, I should say, Bob Nuttig, and Minnesota Chief Executive Officer Jim Polad. So they are all going to meet and try to come up with candidates and a candidate and a successor to Bud Selig, who's retiring. And Rich, any idea who you might like to see as the commissioner of baseball?
Well, I've got my next story loaded here, but I kind of thought it was going to go to Joe Torre or somebody like that, somebody that's been around the game. He's certainly been high-ranking in the MLB, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Torre get this job when it's all said and done.
Well, that would be, I think, a good pick. And I see your next story up there, and it looks like a jersey of Babe Ruth. So what's all that about?
Yes, indeed. It's a jersey from Babe Ruth, indeed. And it's Ruth's retired number jersey. Dates way back to the pride of the Yankees. And, of course, Ruth himself was bigger than the game, as the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum is writing here. And it writes about a piece of fabric that lives in Cooperstown. It's a Ruth jersey that he never wore an official game, and yet was seen by millions of fans during the Babe's lifetime. Interesting story here, and it comes alive at the National Baseball Hall of Fame's museum. It's a new exhibit there called Babe Ruth, His Life and Legend, and it opens to the public June 13th. And an interesting story here. You would assume he would have worn that jersey, but that's the crux of the whole story here. He's never worn that jersey.
So as he never wore that, or he never wore it in a game, or?
Yeah, apparently not. And if you want to read more on the story, check it out right there at baseballhalloffame.com. Baseballhall.org is the website. And just search for Babe Ruth in that box, and then you're going to bring up this nice story. I don't want to read it word for word. Don't want to get in trouble with the Hall of Fame folks. But again, it's a great story, and you can see a lot of these artifacts right in the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum up there in Cooperstown, New York.
Well, I will check that out because last week we discussed the story of my family connection to Babe Ruth as it was, and so we're big fans of the Bambino in my family. So I'll have to check that out. It's very interesting. It sounds like, and also this week, Rich, the Atlanta Braves are moving. In a couple of years, they're building a new ballpark. And some renditions came out in the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, and they got less than a wow factor from the design of this new stadium that they're building. So, more as one writer put it, it just was meh. So,
just like probably a cheap, not a cheap design, but with the prices of some of this construction lately, I guess they have to save $1 or $2 when they can.
I guess so, and but those early renderings and stuff are really hard to go by sometimes, and they're just an artist's view of it, and usually the finished product is a lot different looking, but not getting too high reviews. But the Atlanta Braves are still hanging in first place there in the NL East.
Yeah, the Braves are doing it in a strange way, leading the NL East, Gary, as you said. They have almost the least amount of runs scored so far. The Phillies are just above them, but they, of course, are in last place. But the Atlanta Braves are doing it with pitching, it seems. They've really cornered the market on good pitching. I think they're number one in the NL so far is the Atlanta Braves, but they're near the bottom. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks might be a little bit worse than them on runs scored so far this year, but very strange that the Atlanta Braves are on top of the heap still and really haven't scored more runs than the last place finishing so far, Phillies.
Yeah, very strange, because really thought that when the two main pitches went down, that they were going to be dead in the water, and I thought the division was going to be up for grabs. But somehow they're hanging in there. But it's getting tighter and tighter every day. So we'll see how they can keep doing it without scoring some runs. And they've got a good-sized payroll not to be scoring some runs. So we'll see how that works out for them.
That's for sure. And a story that you had been talking about for the last several weeks and continue to talk about, the Tommy John pitchers so far in 2014. The list is very long. You have Jose Fernandez, Patrick Corbin, Jared Parker, A.J. Griffin, and like you said, the list goes on and on. There's about 12 pitchers so far added to the list that need Tommy John surgery. And Fangraphs, which is one of my favorite baseball websites. I don't know if you stop by there very often, Gary. But they have an interesting story this week. In fact, the other day they posted this on the 16th of May. And it talks about the financial cost to some of these pitchers of the Tommy John surgery. Some pitchers had their contracts more concrete than other pitchers, so some are going to make some money even while they're sick and recovering after the surgery, and some aren't. So there's a lot of good information here on some of the pitchers that will lose because of this injury, and some that will actually make a buck and be all right, so to speak.
Well, it's funny enough, it's just coming out now. I just seeing it coming across the wires. There's a question about Jose Fernandez and how he got his injury, and apparently his attorney is speculating that a recent thigh injury suffered on a comeback line drive may have started a chain of events. The lawyer says his client wasn't 100%, but continued pitching through the injury for the good of the Marlins. So in order to do that, he had to alter his mechanics, and it could be that is a cause of why he got this tear. We'll, of course, never know, but it does remind you almost, for us older timers, the Dizzy Dean situation where he broke a toe on a line drive, and it threw off his mechanics, and he was never the same pitcher after that. But I don't know. It's just it's really an epidemic, and they're checking out things. What is going on, and just can't seem to get it straight. And it's not something that's going to be solved overnight. We talked about this before, and we said there's a number of issues that it could be causing these injuries, and you're just going to have to wait and see if things change along the line somewhere.
Yeah, that's for sure. And with the trouble that Miami has had with attracting fans, we think it's going to be even worse now. So the Phillies, which is a team that I have a blog about at fightinphillies.com and do a Phillies Talk podcast about them, they go down there for a 3-game series starting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It'll be interesting to see how many fans are actually in the seats down there when they go down to see them.
Yeah, it's they have a hard time drawing as it is, and having Fernandez and some of their other players. They still have a decent team, though. They're still up in the fight for the division so far. So, and they do play well at home. So we'll see what's going to happen as time goes on. But this injury thing is just incredible this year.
Yeah, it's very bad, and like you said, we haven't seen one of these years in a long time. A lot of these younger pitchers are simply going out there and throwing their arms out, just not changing up their pitches, not throwing a change-up now and again. They're just going out there and trying to throw 90 every pitch, and it's just not working out pretty well for them.
Well, as I heard on a broadcast the other day, with all these speed guns and stuff, that these kids know that if they can hit 90 and over 90, they can get a contract, and that's probably what's causing a lot of this when they're trying to throw hard at an age that they shouldn't be, and mixing in other pitchers also in there. So it's really a sort of a problem that goes down the line all the way down to maybe even Little League.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we'll let our listeners know here at MLB This Week. Check out our website at MLBThisWeek. It's all one word.com. You can find out more about our previous shows. You can also contact us there if you have a story you'd like us to talk about, or maybe you want to comment about our show. Please send us an email right there. There's a Contact Us page right on the website, Gary, and we'd love to hear from some of our listeners out there.
And if I may, Rich, an audio version of this podcast is now available at MLBthisweek.podomatic.com, and also hopefully soon it'll be on Stitcher Smart Radio. So look for it there. It's all in the process, and I guess maybe soon it'll be in the process on iTunes. We'll see.
Yeah. Once we get our other shows straightened away.
We'll work on this one a little bit, but yeah, it's audio version, and if you can't get to watch us, you can at least listen to us and get some of this good talk down.
Yep, and I apologize for my video tonight. I had to swap out my webcam at the last minute, so if I have some shoddy video, I apologize to our listeners. Well, let's get right into our next story here, Gary, and it's one from a few weeks ago, but it's one that I found a couple days ago on the web, and we're going to see if this will play for us here on the show. And it's actually the Navy SEALs going into San Diego's Petco Park, if you can see that on the screen there. That's recorded on a helmet cam.
Nice.
If you can believe that, from right on the helmet of one of the guys that are jumping into the stadium. So next time somebody tells you they're going to pop into the stadium, just remember this. That is cool.
That is very nice. For those of you that do listen to the audio, we're looking at a video of a parachuter, Navy SEAL parachuting into San Diego Petco Park via a helmet cam, and it was really a cool thing. And Rich, you're going to have to put that link on that on the website.
Yeah, that's another reason to check out our video show here, MLBthisweek.com, or go over to our YouTube site. It's also called MLB This Week. Subscribe to our show there, and every week it'll be delivered to you right via YouTube. So we'd love to have you subscribe to our show out there. And Gary, do you have our last show of the night here? As I see it's starting to get late on the old clock on the wall there.
Well, two things. The title of this week's episode is Baseball at 55, and of course we're referring to Julio Franco, who became the oldest player to hit a home run in baseball when he knocked one out against Randy Johnson in 2007. He is joining the Fort Worth Cats as a player coach later this month at the age of 55. Franco is the same age or older than 19 current major league managers, and it looks like he's going to play a little bit for the Fort Worth Cats. I guess they're an independent league. I'm not really even sure. It doesn't say. They're in the Pioneer League. So
yeah, I believe that is independent baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Julio Franco at the age of 55, that's something. And if I may, one quick other note: the Diamondbacks named Tony La Russa to the newly created position of Chief Baseball Officer. So Tony La Russa back with a team. He was involved with the commissioner's office, so he never really left baseball, but now he's back with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Very cool. And that was another name that I was thinking when you mentioned the search for a new commissioner. You've always had the top two guys up there, Joe Torre and a few other guys really. But I really think Torre's going to get that job. He seems like he's been groomed for that. He's been working for the MLB, and I think he'll be a perfect commissioner.
Yeah, I think he'd be great at it too. Of course, the recent turn of events here in New York, some people would hope that Sandy Alderson gets it, so he leaves the Mets alone. But current Mets general manager. But it really looks, though they do say something about a gentleman by the name of Rob Manfred, who is the chief operating officer, maybe the top candidate. And Bob Bowman, the chief executive MLB Advanced Media, who actually got us knocked off. Let's hope he doesn't get it. He seems to be another top internal candidate. So I don't know. We'll have to see what they do. If they're smart, they'd probably go with a baseball guy like Torre.
Yeah, he's probably the odds-on favorite, I would have to think. Well, a couple more notes, and then we'll wrap this show up for our listeners. New baseball movie out there. It's a Disney film called $1 Million Arm. Apparently it has a Indian gentleman that is part of that film, and he's signed to $1 million deal. So it sounds a little bit interesting. Might want to catch that this summer to watch it.
Yeah, I have to check that out and see. And Rich, you also had down a couple of birthdays for this week.
Yeah, we had this past week Reggie Jackson turning 68 years of age, and I remember Mr. Jackson very well in the early and mid-'70s when I was first becoming a fan of baseball, and there was no better guy to have up at the plate in Yankee Stadium in the '70s than Reggie. I mean, he always delivered for the Yankees, and I'll have plenty of memories of him for the rest of my life. He's a great ball player.
Mr. October certainly could hit.
Yep, and we had another birthday this past week, Brooks Robinson from the Baltimore Orioles. And I remember Brooks Robinson a little bit there when I was a kid in the early '70s, but my memory doesn't go back that far. But he was a great third baseman for the Orioles before Cal came aboard.
He was awesome. They used to call him the vacuum because he could anything hit down there, he sucked it right up and threw him out. But he was probably, if not the best, one of the best of all time.
Yeah, so nice birthdays there going out. Birthday wishes to the Hall of Fame players there, Brooks Robinson and Reggie Jackson. Well, we hope you enjoyed this week's edition of MLB This Week, talking about baseball. It's Rich and Gary here, coming at you every week with our shows that we pick out to bring to you, and you might have missed them along the week. But, Gary, it's another great show, and I'm looking forward to next week's show already.
Me too. Episode number 10. Can't wait for it, Rich.
All right, we'll talk to you again next week from MLB This Week.